Hello everybody, welcome to 2026. Happy New Year. It's great to be back for another year of fun at Data Australasia and hopefully many people who are happy customers. And I hope this year brings us some more positive changes in the NDIS. I'm Elise Lonsdale from Data Australasia and I thought I would start the year off with a talk on troubleshooting because access technology runs over the top of regular technology. So we have to know how to troubleshoot. When, why, and how do we troubleshoot? It's also yet another reason why O&Ms and occupational therapists shouldn't really be doing access tech. Stay tuned and I'll explain.
Data Australasia, guided by lived experience, led by you.
Okay, so access tech, as I said in the introduction, runs over the top of normal tech. For example, JAWS has to run on Windows, which runs on a computer BIOS. Apple VoiceOver runs on the Mac operating system, which, although it doesn't have a BIOS, still runs on the Apple hardware. And this is why people who don't have the experience that I've had, such as O&Ms and OTs, may not be the best people for access tech. So that's a message to the managers of the bigger organisations who maybe, hopefully, are at some point going to be starting to watch these videos. My experience is I'm a former web designer. I'm a former help desk analyst. I'm a former computer technician. And I'm a former Cisco instructor. And yes, I've had my plenty of opportunity to use screwdrivers in my time. And I've done the hard yards. I've blown up things. I've connected things wrong. I've connected things right and had them go. I've learnt a lot from that experience. And like I said, I've got the Cisco stuff behind me. I'm also a former factory worker, wood machinist and whatever else, but that's all irrelevant. So all this former this and former that, you think, well, what's all that about? Well, out of those previous jobs, I've gained a lot of knowledge, and it's that knowledge that feeds through into the current two jobs I have now, one with Statewide Vision Resource Centre and my role at Data Australasia. And I use these skills every day without even thinking. Now, somebody once said to me, if you're fixing somebody's tech up, why should you be doing troubleshooting? Should you be doing that on the NDIS? Well, the bottom line is if you don't, they're without their access tech. They're without their ability to use their computer. The lesson's gone south. And what's more, even if you don't fix it, you can explain to a person who might want to go to a computer tech and say, hey, look, believe it or not, the sound card's gone on my computer. You need to replace the sound card. Or my motherboard's gone. Or the display driver's missing. So sometimes I don't often like playing around with Windows drivers, which is why I went and bought a Mac. In the event that I do, I can. I'm qualified to do so. Believe you me, I am. But I can tell you what, sometimes I don't like it. And if I feel that maybe something will be made worse, I might refer that client to a computer tech and say, this is what you need to tell the computer tech to get them on the right track so they know how to fix your problem. So again, troubleshooting. And I'm going to give you 4 examples of troubleshooting that have happened very recently. One only happened to be yesterday. Now, I work with a client who, and sorry about my voice, I've started the year off with a cold. Okay, I was working with a client remote, and at times I do see this person face to face. This client has a degenerative eye condition that could render her totally blind, at least certainly render her functional vision non-functional. Over the last several years, she's making the switch from screen magnification with ZoomText into JAWS for Windows. She did try NVDA, but likes the speed and accuracy of JAWS, and has a copy of ZoomText JAWS Fusion. We were working away through the remote incident manager software that I'll talk about in other videos, and all of a sudden we got a battery warning. So she goes and plugs in her computer. Now everything looks all right to me and sounds all right to me because I'm still getting the display from RIM. No problems. However, she reports to me, oh, Elise, my screen has gone blank. Now that to a person who can see can be rather tragic, a computer screen going blank. Yes, that's it. Diabolical. But she's been learning JAWS keystrokes. So I said, okay, let's navigate to the desktop with Windows D and then do a Alt F4 to either shut down or restart your computer. Now, I didn't catch her in time because a shutdown is a cold boot And the way her Windows settings are set up, it does shut the system down properly. She's gone into all those advanced settings, but a restart doesn't reconfigure the hardware. Now, I knew this wasn't going to work when she went restart, but I allowed her to do it anyway because it's part of troubleshooting. So she did that. Computer came back up. No screen. But she heard the chime that indicated she was at login prompt. So she typed in her numerical password, brought up the machine, and then I guided her through going Control-Alt-D, which she should have already known, typed that in, and that brought up JAWS. So the machine's working. Still no screen. But I could have continued the lesson with JAWS and lived happily ever after, but no, we couldn't do that to the client. So she thought it was JAWS's screen shade, which is another troubleshooting step. Well, no, it isn't, even though it's an OLED display and would go pretty black if you turned it on. Blindingly black, I might add. That's a layered keystroke. That's insert spacebar F11. So you would not use that keystroke accidentally. So I said, why don't you do a proper shutdown? Now, remember, no screen, so she's going with her JAWS and what she has learnt. So she navigates back to the desktop, goes Alt F4, uses the down arrow to select this time shutdown, not restart, but proper shutdown. Pressed enter, and off she did. And as the computer came back, I said, look for the ASUS logo that comes out of the BIOS. And if you see that, you know that your computer is actually okay, because we could have been looking down the barrel of a major computer hardware problem. But fortunately, the ASUS logo was there, and boom, up comes Windows, asking us to log in. She did, and all is well. So that's troubleshooting. Why did we troubleshoot? We had to find the problem. How did we troubleshoot? In actual fact, moreover, how did we troubleshoot? We just tried a few different things. And when did we do it? We did it on the spot. Now, this takes years of knowledge because I know damn well exactly what had happened. And as the Cisco manuals taught us when we were teaching, and when I was a student at Cisco, if you're a seasoned technician, you'll go with your gut. And my gut was telling me right from the first instance, even without trying half these things like a warm restart, that you should actually just go for a cold reboot. And that is because on these ASUS computers, is that they've got these eco-friendly chips that drive the display and other functions and slow the processor down when you're on battery to conserve battery life. The moment you plug in the power, they switch the display anyway on this computer switches into the more hot, stronger, more power-hungry chips to drive the display. And that's often why you'll often see the display come up a little bit brighter when you plug your computer in. It's switching in different hardware that's has a different efficiency. And those chips didn't switch in, so there was nothing there to drive the display. Just a quirk of nature. My ASUS computer, which is exactly the same, has some little hardware funnies about it too. So I knew that's exactly what the problem was probably going to be. But I let the client do a little bit of troubleshooting. Problem number 2. 2 and 3, so that's problem number 1. It also happened recently, and 2 and 3 are related. Back in June, again with the same client, they actually did a JAWS upgrade from the previous build to the June 2025 build, a minor update. And remember, they're running ZoomText Fusion. And guess what? Nothing would work afterwards. Nothing would work. And that's because the whole JAWS install had blown up. And I don't think in that instance they had previous versions of JAWS to use. Now, I was all prepared to come on remotely and do a lesson. I had a lesson plan drawn up. Everything was going to work well. So I thought, until we logged on. And all of a sudden, my JAWS, I tried to fix it yesterday and it all broke. So I spent the next 2 hours troubleshooting and fixing by uninstalling all the bits of JAWS, puts in Freedom Scientific this, Freedom Scientific that, Freedom Scientific that. And the reason I know all this is because I've dicked around in the back end of JAWS for years. Actually, I have done it for years. The same with the problem with the screen not working in the other instant. I've messed around with computer hardware, so I know how these things work. Layered models. We'll talk about that in other videos. Anyhow, to cut a long story short, I pulled out all the JAWS. I used the JAWS. This is all done remotely, I might add. I use the JAWS, either the normal JAWS or most likely the offline installer that puts everything on, and put the JAWS or the ZoomText Fusion installer in. And after I pulled out all the bits of stuff from previous versions that were JAWS left over, I did pretty much a a new install of JAWS. The keys, the license keys were still on the computer. I know how to back those up too, by the way. Yes, so if you don't want to blow away an install count, but you've got to rebuild your computer, it's easy to salvage the keys. Anyway, I knew we weren't affecting that. So effectively a brand new install of JAWS ZoomText Fusion. Boom, up she came, working beautifully. Now, this led into problem number 3, which occurred in July. And I was able to get to this client. She contacted me while I was down the shops, but I was able to ring her back later in the day. And she said, I just tried to upgrade from JAWS, the May-June build to the June-July build of JAWS, minor update again. Now, she's totally blind, so she didn't have to think about Fusion, but the same problem occurred, and I'll tell you exactly why it occurred after I'm done with this. It happened because all of a sudden she rings up and says, there's no JAWS. So she told me she had previous versions of JAWS on her computer, unlike the first client. So I said, okay, to get you through the night, because I said I could probably come tomorrow. My daytime job at Statewide Vision Resource Centre isn't working tomorrow because it's school holidays. Would you like me to come tomorrow? That's how quickly we can get to a person. And she agreed. But to get her through the night, she's a highly respected member of the blindness community and got my phone number from her brother. So thank you. And I was able to talk her through running JAWS 2024. Yes, it's a previous main version of JAWS. It turns out she had them all the way back to about 2020, I think, on the computer, maybe even 2019. So she ran the earlier version of JAWS, which may be not the best solution, but it would get her through the night. And she could run that by going Windows R and typing in JAWS 2024, enter. Boom, up comes the old version of JAWS. The reason that worked so well was because the previous version of JAWS was there. So what had happened? Okay, so it got her through the night. So I went round there the following day, armed with the knowledge from my first client. And as I said, I found several versions of JAWS on the computer. So not only did I uninstall all those old previous versions of JAWS, I actually took out, I may have left the 2024 version there. It's months ago, I can't remember, but I took out 23, 22, 21, 20, and probably 19, and maybe even 18, just for the heck of it. There were several versions there. And then I pulled out all the FS this and the FS that, the OmniPage this and the Voices that, and all of Freedom Scientific. If you go into Add Remove Programs in Windows, you'll see it all there. It's a mess. But again, it comes from years and years and years of knowledge of messing around with JAWS. I put on the new JAWS 2025, and it worked like a charm. Now, the reason this all worked so well is because the beauty about JAWS is that each version of JAWS, 24, 25, 23, 22, 21, are all what we call sandboxed. So if you break one version, which is what happened in both these upgrades, it's not going to bust the earlier versions of JAWS if you still have them there. So I tend to run 2 or 3 versions on my computer. I'd say to clients only to support the latest version, but just in case something goes down, at least I've got the older version. The only connectivity between those versions of JAWS and ZoomText is user settings, which is even in another sandbox. So you can, there's even a keystroke to override the user settings and go back to a standard. So if you break those, there's plenty of ways of getting out of it. But it comes from years of knowledge. And here's the thing. Here's what probably broke both of Case 2 and Case 3's installs and upgrades. Microsoft Windows has a thing called UAC, User Account Control, which first reared its ugly head back in the mid-2000s when Windows Vista was new. It's Microsoft's quaint attempt to get round to do some form of security. It's a bloody nuisance because it stops a lot of Access Tech from saving user settings. I know it used to stop ZoomText from saving its configurations if people had put in custom configurations on ZoomText. And it's a bloody pest. And originally, JAWS couldn't even read the screen. So the first thing we do, and I know this happened with the first client because we were trying to get her a good score in her virus program and it told us to turn it back on. But by default, I usually turn that off. And I reckon, from years of experience and gut knowledge, as I said about using your gut, that user account control interfered with the install. Because it will pop up a window and it'll say user account control software wants to make changes to your computer, answer yes or no. Now usually if you answer no, it drops out, but it may have already started part of the install at that point. If you answer yes, well, I can guarantee you will not be free of issues. So you might answer yes and let a bit of software install itself, but I reckon somewhere in the background it's still messing up the install, which of course in both these cases broke the JAWS install. So when doing Access Tech, guys, turn off UAC. It's as simple as that. Case number 4 came to me only this morning on one of my WhatsApp groups that I run. And that is a lady in New Zealand who I know very well, running NVDA on a very modern computer that she's only acquired recently. No audio. Oh yes, for a totally blind person or a person with no functional vision, no audio on a computer is diabolical. And at some level, I think JAWS and NVDA could actually reset the keys in the registry to bring the audio back. But there are some audio problems that are caused by the BIOS. And similarly with disconnecting the network adapter. And yes, I've got some function keys on my computer that do exactly that. F5, F6, and probably even F7 will break or will turn off the network adapter and the audio, and I triggered it once. That is another reason, and I'll talk about special functions in a minute. She was talking about using F6. She must have been trying to get from one pane to another, which is what you do with JAWS and NVDA if you want to navigate window panes, F6. Now, she well may have triggered the mute on her computer. I don't know that because all of these special function keys are all different. None of them are standard. So I suggested that she might want to press F6 again or even FNF6 to toggle whatever has happened, if it has happened, back on. Otherwise, she may need sighted assistance. And sighted assistance might be able to say in the notification or system tray area whether there's an X against the speaker or whether there's no sound device there at all. The special function keys operate at a BIOS level. Now, how many OTs and O&Ms are going to know what the BIOS is? The BIOS is a part of a Windows computer or a PC, not a Mac, but a PC that runs under the operating system, and it controls a lot of the hardware. And I think that's what's happened now. If you've turned off audio at a BIOS level, you are not going to get audio working. No O&M or well-meaning occupational therapist is going to have a snowball's chance in hell of fixing that. It's not going to happen. But people with technology backgrounds, such as myself, do know these things because I've done Cisco. And even when I did Cisco, I'd already mucked around much anyway. I breezed my way through Cisco, comparatively speaking. It was great fun back in those days. It was good fun. We learned a lot, but I had a lot of knowledge prior to then. So it was really good days. But the thing is, it's all this layered model stuff, the BIOS, the operating system, then the end user. So that's what comes of knowledge. I hope my friend in New Zealand has since been able to fix the problem. And that just brings me to one small point before I go. When you're using Access technology, turn off the special function keys because our JAWS, for example, uses insert F3, insert F5, insert F6, insert F7, insert F9 for frames, etc. And we need those keys to be normal function keys. If you want to change your display or turn off a piece of hardware like another monitor or your network adapter, hold the FN key down and do it. And usually on the Lenovo computers, the Asus computers, and some of the other brands, maybe even the Acer computers. Some of them you've got to go into BIOS to fix this, but sometimes it's a simple case of holding the FN key down and pressing escape, and it toggles the FN key functionality with special functions. That comes with knowledge. So that's a great way to start the year, troubleshooting, 4 good cases, and I look forward to talking more about this as time goes on and seeing you in the next video. Thank you for watching.
For fast, efficient access technology training and support, call Elise Lonsdale from Australia 0448 966 533. That's 0448 966 533. Or from New Zealand on 027 315 2858. That's 027 315 2858. Data Australasia. Guided by lived experience, led by you.